Picture this. You open the front door after an exhausting day at work, and instantly your dog rushes over. Like you're the absolute center of their universe. You crash on the couch to watch Netflix, and they curl up, fast asleep at your feet. Or maybe you're walking down a dark, empty street at night. You don't feel scared. You don't feel alone. Why? Because they are right there by your side. That feeling? It's safety. It's comfort. It's pure, unconditional friendship. The bond between humans and dogs is so natural and so perfect, it almost feels like they were custom built just for us. But have you ever stopped to wonder, in a wild, brutal world driven by the survival of the fittest, when did dogs actually enter the picture? How does a wild animal just decide to leave the wilderness behind, move into our living rooms, eat our food, and defend us with their lives? Stick around to the end of this video, because the story of how we found each other isn't some grand design. It wasn't a master plan cooked up by early humans. As it turns out, history's greatest friendship is actually the result of a beautiful, wild series of natural accidents. And it all started over 30,000 years ago, right in the freezing heart of the Ice Age. Whether you were in the dense pine forests of North America or out on the vast snow-covered steppes, life back then boiled down to a single word: survival. And at that time, humans and wolves were definitely not friends. In fact, we were each other's fiercest competition. But here's the crazy part. If you look closely, early humans and wolves were actually incredibly similar. We were both deeply social, pack-hunting animals. We both used coordinated tactics to take down the exact same massive prey, like moose and reindeer. And naturally, we both saw each other as a massive threat. For our ancestors, the moment the sun went down, a long howl echoing from the dark woods meant one thing: death. Wolves were the ultimate danger. They were phantoms, prowling right at the very edge of the campfire's light. So, the big question is, how exactly does a sworn, deadly enemy cross that boundary of light? It all started with a pretty mundane habit. Early humans, they were incredibly messy eaters. Hunter-gatherers tossed out a ton of scraps. Bones, scraps of hide, leftover meat. Now, for a wolf, taking down a 1,000-pound moose is a deadly gamble. One solid kick and it's game over. But those trash piles just outside the human camps, that was a goldmine of perfectly safe free calories. At first, the wolves hanging around were super cautious. Any loud noise sent them running. The overly aggressive ones, humans took them out with spears. But out of thousands of wolves, a few were born just a little bit different. Scientists call this evolutionary mechanism survival of the friendliest. Research shows that some wolves naturally had lower levels of the stress hormone, cortisol. They were less fearful, less aggressive, and way more curious. These braver wolves were the ones willing to step just a little closer to the fire. They got the most food. They survived. And they passed those exact same friendly genes down to their pups. Generation after generation, this invisible selection process created a totally new subpopulation of wolves. They constantly hung around the camps, but their presence no longer came with menacing growls or the threat of an attack. Instead, they embraced a completely new survival strategy. They laid down their weapons, choosing to live in the shadow of their former enemy. But a true partnership can't just be one-sided. If those wolves had just stuck to scavenging on the outskirts of camp, they would have ended up like raccoons, just urban scavengers, living near humans, but never truly belonging to us. The massive historical turning point happened when humans finally decided to bring them inside the tents. Now, picture this. A hunting party is out tracking in the woods and takes down a mother wolf. Inside her den, they find a litter of shivering pups. Instead of turning them into dinner, these hardened hunters tuck the pups into their fur coats and carry them back to camp. Why on earth would humans go soft like that? It makes absolutely no sense, right? Well, turns out, our brains were being completely hijacked by our own biology. In neurology, there's a phenomenon called baby schema. Human brains are hardwired to practically melt whenever we see a very specific set of features. Big, round eyes, a large forehead, a short little snout, clumsy, awkward movements. It doesn't matter if it's a human infant or a wild animal pup. The second we see those traits, our brains flood with a massive wave of hormones. It instantly triggers a deep, overwhelming instinct to nurture and protect. Our ancestors simply couldn't resist that level of cute. Those wild orphans were brought back. They were hand-fed by the tribe. They grew up playing alongside human children. And eventually, they began to see humans as their brand new pack. That was the exact moment it happened. The two greatest predators of the Pleistocene epoch officially signed a pact to survive together. Now, think about this. If this partnership only happened in one random cave, we could just call it a rare historical fluke. But the reality is so much bigger. Back then, there were no global trade routes, no internet for tribes to share dog taming tutorials. Yet, Hunter-gatherers living thousands of miles apart made the exact same decision. By analyzing ancient fossil DNA, researchers at Oxford University found something mind-blowing. Dogs were likely domesticated independently in at least two different parts of the world, one deep in Western Europe and one in East Asia. And they were tamed from completely different wild wolf populations. What does this prove? It proves this friendship wasn't a coincidence, it was almost a force of nature, a deep connection that humans craved, whether they were in the East or the West. Starting from those different wolf lineages created the ultimate foundation for massive genetic diversity. Over thousands of years, those identical wild animals evolved into something unbelievable, from a massive, snow-loving husky to a stumpy little corgi waddling across your lawn. As human society leveled up, so did this relationship. We stopped wandering, we settled down, built farms, and tamed other animals like cows and sheep. And right on cue, dogs adapted. They went from being living alarm systems and hunting buddies to dedicated herders and livestock guardians. But their most incredible adaptation wasn't a skill. It was hard-coded right into their DNA. When humans started farming and eating more wheat and grains, dogs did something extraordinary. They physically changed their bodies to stay with us. Geneticists found a specific mutation in dogs called AMY2B. They evolved to multiply this gene way more than their wolf ancestors. This gave their stomachs the superpower to digest starch. Simply put, dogs literally re-engineered their own digestive systems, just so they could share a meal with us at the very first farming tables. But if this story was just a mutually beneficial business deal, it wouldn't explain the deep bond we have today. There was a specific moment in history when our ancestors stopped looking at dogs as survival tools and started seeing them as family. Let's travel to Germany. About 14,200 years ago at an archaeological site called Bonn Oberkassel. Here, researchers unearthed a truly unique grave. A man, a woman, and a tiny puppy curled up peacefully right next to them. The most shocking part of this discovery? The puppy's bone structure. It showed that this animal suffered from a severe infection, likely distemper, right from birth. In the brutal world of the Ice Age, a sick, useless animal was nothing but a burden. Nature should have eliminated it within days. Yet, this puppy survived for months. What does that mean? It means these prehistoric humans, people struggling every single day just to find their next meal, willingly sacrificed. They gave up scarce food. They gave up precious rest, all to hold, warm, and hand-feed a sick little dog. In that exact moment, in the middle of a freezing era, domestication transcended survival. It became compassion, it became respect, and it remains the ultimate proof of true love between two completely different species. Looking back at all of human history, dogs hold a completely unique title. They are the only animal to join human society before we invented agriculture, before we had a written language, before we even invented the wheel. Thousands of years later, we tamed cattle for meat and labor. We tamed horses for riding and transport. But we didn't tame dogs to be tools. We tamed them so we wouldn't have to face the dark alone. And that bond isn't just some dusty archaeological record. It is literally flowing through your veins, and your dog's veins, right now, every single day. Here's the thing. When you and your dog look deep into each other's eyes, an invisible kind of magic happens. That surge of love you feel isn't just in your head. It is a genuine, intense, and pure biological connection. In that exact moment of eye contact, both of you are simultaneously releasing oxytocin, the love hormone. Out in the wild, wolves see direct eye contact as a threat, a challenge. But dogs are different. They actually evolved to use eye contact as a language of love. Those big pleading puppy dog eyes they give you when you're eating, that isn't just a random trick. That is a communication system, perfected over 30,000 years of evolution. It's literally hard-coded to hack straight into the human heart and brain. So, tonight, when you see your four-legged best friend curled up asleep on the couch, or when they nudge your hand with that wet nose, begging for a pet, remember this story. Inside that adorable, sometimes goofy exterior is so much more than just a pet. They are the greatest legacy of survival, the living, breathing result of an ancient pact, made when humans and wild beasts decided to share their warmth around an ice age fire. Thanks so much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed this story, and don't forget to give your dog a huge hug today. I'll see you in the next one.